Hey everybody, it's Lance Dawson. I am back again with my amigo Andrew Stewart. Today, we have in the studio with us somebody that I have been waiting a long time to get onto Backstage Lowdown. So we're both really excited to welcome Ron Hawkins. Ron Hawkins is a Canadian songwriter, Canadian musician. You may know him best known for fronting the band Lowest of the Low. And I have watched him do solo acts as Ron Hawkins. I've watched him front Lowest of the Low, Rusty Nails, and my personal favorite, although I do, like everyone else, love Lowest of the Low, but I'm a big Do Good Assassins fan too. And we've got Ron in the studio today. We're getting to talk to him about a new album that's coming out with The Low and anything else about music and the road and just life as a Canadian musician, Canadian icon. So buckle up. It's going to be a fun ride. As always, just to let you know, this episode sponsored by Look Digital Marketing. From stunning websites to full service digital marketing, they help your business shine online. See the difference with Look Digital Marketing. Visit lookmarketing.ca today. You don't have to look anywhere else. Here we go.
Yeah.
Well, now that we've got that clear, Ron, thanks, buddy. I
Yeah.
so appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah. No
I,
problem. My pleasure.
I was saying to Andrew earlier about we've talked several times now, and I've said Ron has always been incredibly generous with his time, given that he's got like 18 musical projects going on in his head at all times, not to mention the painting and 20 other things he does. So I've
Yeah.
always really appreciated that about you. So thank you for taking some time today
It's
with
Tai
us.
Chi, Lance.
Is it
It's all flow, buddy.
sweet? I knew a guy one time and I watched him, and this is in Toronto, and he was walking down this alley so slowly, and I said, "Hey, what are you doing?" and he looked at me and goes, "Lance, sometimes the world just moves too fast, man, and you got to slow down."
You
And
gotta
he was
slow it
walking
down.
at like a glacial pace. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it was
Yeah.
weird. Yeah. So it's the Tai Chi.
Whatever gets you through the night, man.
Yes. There you go.
Little
So
walking meditation.
walking meditation.
Mhm.
Exactly. So
For the
Ron,
record, I
we
don't actually
oh,
do
yeah.
Tai Chi. I
You make it up
just
as you go.
find that my art practice is flowing right now like a dance or like Tai Chi. It just seems like if I write it down, I'm a bit overwhelmed by like, holy crap, that's a lot of stuff. But it just seems to kind of everything seems to happen. So
There you go. Do you
not
find that
questioning
you
it.
get, do you find that you like, it's like a sine curve, like there's some periods of the year for whatever reason you hit a vein and you're like, oh, I'm everything, I don't have to work for it right now. There's no writer's block. There's just things are
Mhm.
flowing.
Yeah, it's not usually a time of year per se. It's just that I recognize it when it happens. There'll be these, you know, I'm right now. I just turned 60 last week, and I'm in this kind of period of where I'm sort of elated by the blessings that I'm surrounded by and that I have. And I'm at a point in my life where it's like, not only is it great to have all these blessings, but it's great to know that you have them.
Right.
And so I don't really ask too many questions of the universe. It's sort of like, this roller coaster seems to happen. And most of it is peaks. Like I have a lot of great flow times. The taps so far, I'm knocking on wood here, doesn't seem to get turned off too much. And when when there's a bit of a downtime there, as you say, I turn to painting, or or just I've also I have a fantastic family and we do lots of fun, crazy stuff. Ruby and I were into puzzling last year, and there's a place in Toronto called Puzzle Nerds. So we were back at Puzzle Nerds every week buying new puzzles, right? And
Oh,
That's
wow.
wicked.
yeah,
All
it's
right.
crazy.
How old is, so you're saying, how old is Ruby now? I've heard you reference her like a few times over the
Yeah,
years.
she's 18.
Wow. Wow. That's
Talk
different,
about
right? Being a
flow.
dad
Yeah,
of 18. Yeah. Talking
yeah,
about
for
flow.
sure.
No kidding. Um,
But
yeah.
it's funny because I've had, being a musician who has a kid, it's like when Ruby was born, it's funny because I was surrounded by, I won't name them by names because they won't come off well in the story, but some of my musician friends were like, well, we had a good run, Ronnie, and I was like, oh, is that it? Are we done? Right. Like, and so I'll admit that even like the last 4 months while Jill was pregnant and we were waiting for Ruby to be born, I started to get a bit freaked out by some of these very obviously always men, very freaked out guys who thought, well, that's it, rock and roll is dead, right? And then, Ruby came into our life, and I have a picture of her first passport. Like, Jill had to hold her up, she's so small. And we had a passport, and we went to Brooklyn to a friend's wedding, and then we went to Mexico, and it was sort of like, oh yeah, no, you just incorporate them into your life, and
Right.
Life moves on.
life moves on.
No, I see that's smart parenting, because I think maybe one of the errors that's kind of happening now is that when you make the child like the center of your universe, like you do revamp everything for that child. I don't know what the message is that they get, and that's an awful lot of burden for them to hang on to as they grow older. I think that's the way to do it. Like, look, I've got this great life going on, my wife and I, whatever, and now it's better. We've got two sons, and it's great. They add to it, but this is the way we're going, and I like that. So.
And being
So
a
how
musician, it's like
yeah.
I spent a lot of my early adult life surrounded by grown babies, right? And this is at least a baby that you can throw them in a baby Bjorn and take them somewhere. Like the big babies, you can't, right? The big babies you got to fight in the van with all the time.
Yeah. It's
So
hard to give a drummer a timeout. I've given it a shot, man. I've never won yet.
yeah,
They are
and the time will
loud.
speed up and slow down. And
Yeah. How was that, Ron? Like this is kind of listen, I've listened to you've been interviewed by so many people. And so my goal today not only was to have fun with you, but I really just wanted to keep you interested, because I know everybody's asked every possible question in iteration of your career. So if there is something that's repetitive, I do apologize up front.
oh,
I've always been curious, is that, you guys were a band in the 90s in Toronto, you're slugging it out, and then you come out with Shakespeare in My Butt. And for those of you who've been living under a rock, this is like one of the best albums. And this is not just my opinion. This is actually official. It's one of the best Canadian albums out there. Um,
yeah, my mom thinks so too. Yeah,
yeah.
it's not just you.
No,
That's
your,
why we
your
have our
mom and
mothers.
I. Exactly.
She wrote the
It's-
blog where we read it.
Yeah, that's right. Mrs. Hawkins said. God love her. That's awesome. No, I'm saying so your life changes. All of a sudden you've got I was reading a book by Jerry D, a popular Canadian comedian, and he talks about Canadian celebrity, and then there's celebrity, etc. But
Yeah.
your life had to change after that album, and I'd really like to know sort of what that process is with you and the band, and then how did you incorporate? Like all of a sudden you have to get a family, but now I've got this success that comes very rarely, right, to a lot of musicians. So
Mhm.
can you just let us know what that was kind of like?
Well, it's a grab bag of things, because I think our journey through it might be different than a lot of bands in terms of uh, you know, you may have heard this before in different interviews, but I kind of came to music through both music and politics as a young Marxist. And it was like the first band I had with my friend. We started this Marxist punk rock band, three-piece band. And David, actually, in the documentary about the Low, David, the drummer of the Low, says that when he came, because he was the drummer of Social Insecurity too, he answered an ad in the paper, and he said when he came to the cafe to meet us, he was, already with all of his musical influences and blah blah blah. He said we didn't ask him a single thing about music the whole time. It was all about what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on that? It was all political stuff, right? Because we
Yeah.
wanted to know that he was going to be a good fit with us in our brain, right? So
Yeah,
we
for
went
sure.
through that band, and then the next band, Popular Front. Like we came at this saying, like, we don't buy the whole rock star thing. Like maybe when I was 15 and 16, I that interested me with the music thing, but by the time I was actually in bands, it was like that's all bullshit, and I want to make a difference in the world. I want our music to change the world, literally change the world. That's how naive and wonderful it was back then. And I don't want to be a rock star. I don't want to be a fucking asshole who just trashes hotel rooms and takes advantage of people, and everybody has to kowtow to me. Like that's the worst, right? So we had very little success, like little pockets here and there. And then the Low blew up, right? So then we had the Low, and Shakespeare specifically blew up, and we found ourselves in this world where uh, that kind of toxicity and fame is beyond you to some degree. Because even me, I was the one of the three of us, probably, or the four of us, who was the most hypersensitive that I didn't want to be a rock star, but we were all wired that way. And then you find yourself just doing things that are just rock star moves, like because everybody's telling you you're a genius all the time. And you get to Calgary, and some poor person from the student body is making 12 Caesars at load in, like not 12 beers, like 12 Caesars. Like they got to get
Right.
hit, they got to go to work, right? So just shit like that, and just things we did to people, things I allowed myself to do to people close to me. Also at the same time developed a substance abuse problem, which is the most boring story you can hear about a rock musician, because that's the most cliche thing you could possibly do. But a lot of
Yeah.
people do it. And
Is that just because all of a sudden you're exposed to it? Like before you wouldn't be, but now you just are. Is that
I think it's, I'm sure, yeah, a lot of it is exposure. It's free everywhere. At the end of every night on the road, there's some kid wants to invite you back to a party at their house, and there's, drugs and people throwing themselves at you. And, like, it's the worst things that could happen to somebody unless you're incredibly grounded, And most of us,
right?
when we're 25, and this is the first time this is all happening, are not grounded enough to really deal with it, right?
Right.
And
Oh,
I
sure.
think the whole thing is just toxic. It's built on this idea of geniuses, and this idea of like, well, then geniuses have to be allowed to do their thing, and we can't put normal parameters on a genius.
You
You
don't
got
want
to
to
get out of their
interrupt their
way.
process.
Oh, you're going to wreck it. You're going to ruin which is all bullshit, and it's all something that we all take part in and feed. And so, we experienced that, and then 100% that is one of the probably 80% of the reason the band broke up in 1994 was overworked. Nobody ever imagined you could take a break, because back then people didn't take breaks when they
Right.
were having
Right.
success. More
Ride the
success, more
wave.
success. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we all developed some kind of a substance abuse problem. We were all being groomed to be rock stars. All of that horrible stuff just exploded the band in a way that if I felt the way I feel now, a much more grounded person, uh, we would have taken a break. We would have done some self-care, as they say these days. We would have done
Yeah.
some self-care, and we would have moved on. We would have continued to be that band. Luckily for me, we've continued to be that band, but with some casualties along the way, right? So, but here are me and Dave back, just like we were in Social Insecurity, trying to change the world with our music, but from a much more grounded place. And it's the thing is, like, my daughter, it's funny that now that she's 18, because we've used the phrase Canadian famous a lot around our house as well. But
Right.
she, when she sees a gold record on the wall, and when she hears, and when somebody stops us at wherever, Costco or wherever the hell we might be, that's impressive to her. And she doesn't, and she's finally now at 18 realizes, well, you sort of engineered the fact that you're not more successful than you are. You made choices that kind of sabotage the idea of you becoming, because there's only one way to do that, I think, which is bite the bullet, get on that machine, and just stay on it, and that's not
Right.
what we got into it in the first place for, and that's not why we're into
Yeah.
it now. So we're just holding on to the community that we've created, and that's more than good enough for us.
Well, that's
Well, you
very
don't
cool.
hear that perspective very often, but to me it sounds like just sort of reworking that argument backwards is that when
Mhm.
you it's Jill, right? Did I get that right?
Yeah.
When you met, yeah, you have Jill and you have Ruby, now all of a sudden you realize, oh, there's a lot of things that are as important or more important than the next song, the next album. And it just gives you so much more power to sit back and
Mhm.
say, yeah, not for me. Not right now. You
And
know?
I will caveat that by the fact that I have a certain amount of privilege in that I got to do that in the old school way back in the day, which had set me up for the fact that, I can make decisions now based on, like, I'm still going to eat. If I tell, you know, uh, what's the show? Elliot, no, what's the show? The Toronto, they've got a Toronto one now, Law and Order Toronto. If I
Oh,
tell
Oh,
Law,
right.
if I
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
Law and Order Toronto to go, jump in the Lake Ontario, they're not going to use this song. I'm still going to eat. Whereas I know a lot of people who are 25 years old, 30 years old in their bands, and there are so much fewer ways to monetize your music in a way that doesn't make you feel sick,
Right.
that, I can make decisions because I know that I have a successful music and painting career that I can depend on. So,
Right.
gives me more ammunition to make these decisions. But
yeah,
I,
for
I think
sure.
I would still make them anyway, because I was doing that back when I didn't have this stuff. But it just does make it easier.
But
Yeah.
sometimes as a young musician or a young artist, you're just looking for ways to pay the rent and put food on the table.
Mm-hmm.
And you just want your art to be heard one way or another, and it's becoming more difficult to do so now. I mean, you put
Yeah.
yourself out there into the ethos of the internet and hope and hope that somebody notices. But
Yeah.
those are still one in a million, but just
Oh my God. It's like,
just in a different way.
I often say that, every band I know that's 25 years old is better than our band was when we were 25 years old. We had like Shakespeare but is a good record. I think we captured something, and there's something in the writing that's distinct and authentic to it. But all the other stuff, like as far as how well they play, how prepared they are to be performers, like so many bands now, and that's probably also partially because of social media and the internet.
Hmm.
They're so much farther ahead than we were at that age. They've got it
Hey,
all. I know so many
Yeah.
of my friends, they've got it
yeah.
all. I'm like, how is this not wildly successful?
Who are
But
some of
it's
the bands that you're listening to right now? Some of those young bands.
yeah. Well, like Sky Wallace,
Hmm.
we toured with her. I discovered a video of hers. I didn't discover it like Christopher Columbus. It existed before I discovered it, but I discovered it for me on a YouTube video, and was just so blown away by the composure of what she was doing and the lyrics. And I actually sent her an email or a DM on Facebook and said, I don't often do this, but I said, I often see a band I like whose music I like and their lyrics suck, or somebody's got something really amazing to say, but it's a total bore musically. And I said, this is the full package. I can't believe that you pulled that off. And just because of her attitude in the video and the way she looked and everything, I thought she was going to be this like sort of snarky punk rock girl and sort of go, yeah, whatever, or thanks, you know. But she was so lovely, and she was like, oh, geez, Ron, I can't believe, and it was like, oh,
Bet
that's a
you're even reaching
Canadian,
out.
yeah, it's a Canadian artist, totally thrilled with another Canadian artist reaching out. And then we became friends. And then her band opened for the Low on a tour for one of our records, for the Agit Pop record, I think. And we just became
Right.
like a family. And so I've had a real window into Sky's development, and she's just making better and better records. Everything is great. But when I talk to her about how is it really going, I know
Hmm.
social media makes everything look like it's blowing up everywhere. And she's like, yeah, it's a struggle, man. It's like, she's like, yeah, she went to Europe and did a tour there. Can she go back and do it again? Who knows? Like my other friends, like they're having, they're like, we've never made a nickel selling records. We've never, we really struggle to make money on the road. But luckily, horribly and luckily at the same time, it'll always be there because people need it and people need to do it. And like I did it when we had to make a big pot of soup, and we just lived on it for the week.
Yeah.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem like struggle. Like that's the thing, is when you're young and when you're first into it, it's exciting, and it's like it doesn't really feel like struggle, even if you're not eating. You
Right.
feel it feels exciting. And that's great, because you need that kind of jet fuel at the beginning.
Yeah. Your scale is different, I find. Like when I was young and just playing, I just wanted to play music all the time. And I didn't really think, I don't know if this sounds shallow. I just didn't think money was that important. And then as you get older, you don't make it the crux of your life, but you start to realize, well, yeah, like you need to have some to function.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a challenge. And then when I talk to more and more Canadian musicians, we all talk about it now. It's like you just have to say yes to everything. And if you want to have, even maybe your whole life isn't music, maybe that's not floating the boat, but if you want it in your life, you say yes to all the gigs. And if you write a song for a commercial, or or you get to go on tour with like Lowest to the Low, or you take up painting, if you can generate that, like you can't be selective unless you're like the top of the heap. And then as Ron alluded to, the top of the heap isn't always that great a position.
Yeah. And then there's also, I'm not much of a mystic, but there is also something to be said for, and I've experienced it in my life. Uh, when you get to a position where you're just pissed off and you're like, you know what, I'm not going to say yes to everything. I'm going to say yes
Right.
to the things that make sense to me, and I'm going to say no to the things that I don't want to do. I found in my life too, doing that, you know, I don't have any other way to say it except that the universe somehow, uh, rewards that in a way too. Like I know that some people think that if you don't value this comes up when I talk about pricing artwork, because what more abstract thing would there be than how much does a piece of art is it worth, right? Like it doesn't make sense. Like
Yeah.
money itself is kind of an illusion. So let alone what is, like, they're not grapes. You can't weigh it. You can't. It's not just about how much hours you put into it. So it's like it's an abstract idea anyway. So I've found to myself that when I underprice myself or when I value it,
Undervalue.
so do other people. And it's a weird thing, right? Where it's almost like when you throw the value out there to somebody, they want to buy this painting and you go, well, this is how much I think it's worth. I found that people come to that and they kind of honor it. And every now and then, like, because I'm a working class kid, every now and then somebody would go, oh man, that's too rich for my blood. And I go, well, like, talk to me. What can we do? Would installments help? If we could do installments, what do you think? What do you like? If we're not a million miles out, maybe we can work
make
it
something happen.
And often then that happens too. Like I've done installments with people and everything. So there's ways around it. But I think what you don't want to do is really undervalue. You don't want word to get out there that you'll do absolutely anything for money,
No, I agree. But as
your manager will grab a hold of that. And
but you said earlier too, like I agree with you. And philosophically, it's awesome to hang on to that. And if you do have something else that's floating the boat, then you get to be in a position of saying, I'm not doing that. Right. And if Shakespeare, my butt, put you in a position to say, this is great because now I don't have to say yes to everything. Right.
Yeah. And also, I mean, here's a good example. And you may know the story anyway, but like back when we were doing that, like the idea of putting your songs in a TV commercial or maybe even a show, if the show wasn't great or whatever, was complete anathema to people. Like, like there's no way you do that. And your friends would go,
right.
If you did, it'd be like, what are you fucking selling out? Or, the sellout word was everywhere, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And we also believed it, right? We thought, well, we didn't make this music to sell shoes. We made this music to spread ideas in a community that we want to build, right? Yeah. So when Shakespeare hit very early on, and at this point we had no money at all, we were completely broke. Molson Canadian came to us and said, hey, we want to give you $75,000 to use salesman cheats and liars in a beer commercial, right? And so we had a bit of a powwow, and luckily for me, because I was a no way right off the bat as the songwriter, but I was also in a band, and it was a Democratic band, and so we had a powwow. Luckily, everybody was on board with like, fuck that, like it's shitty beer that we don't even drink. Are they even listening to the lyrics? Because we're kind of shitting on corporations,
right?
Anyway, so we said no, and they were kind of shocked, right? And then it was the kind of thing like every couple of months, our manager would come back to us, and they had upped the amount of money. And here's how self-important and paranoid I got. At a certain point, when it got to like $100,000 and something, and then I'll admit we were all shaking a little bit because we're like, that's a van, and it's
a lot of money.
Yeah, like we could actually eat regularly, and it would be awesome.
Record a lot of albums for that money. Well, some, some albums,
yeah, we could for sure. And I got it in my head at that point that they were trying to break us because we were some kind of a symbol of holdouts in Toronto. We were the indie freedom fighters that they talk about, and we're, if they could break lowest of the low, they can break anybody. Of course, none of that was going on because they weren't thinking about that at all. They were just wanted to use the song. But we held out, and to our credit, I think now, if you talk to anybody who's under 50, they'll go, credit, you were idiots. What are you talking about? You could have spent that money. You could have sent that money to the revolution. It was like, I know, I get it, but I'm proud of that. And, when Ruby was actually quite younger, she's always been very, very smart and very, she really gets it. That story came up and she said, you know what, Dad, like she said, if you had done that, that money would be gone now. And she said, and all you would feel is you'd feel like you made the wrong decision, and I was like, that kid, I think that's my kid.
Yeah. Do you ever think that the band's ability to say no has fueled your writing?
For sure. I think what it is that's what our band is about. And every time we do the right thing, in my mind, and every time I get a message from somebody who says, your music got me through this, or your music was part of this thing, or that I find positive, or we go and get asked to go down to a demonstration and be the band at the demonstration, or whatever it is, like it's a feedback loop, right? It's like, we put that in there, we baked it into the cake, and now we're seeing signs of it in the world, and then that inspires us to continue to do it. And it's just a very, very positive feedback loop. That would be weirder if it was all about Coke and hookers and,
Yeah.
what it's supposed to be about.
The ingredient you keep coming back to that I think is so important, because I say it to my kids all the time. Like, if knowing yourself is so important because it helps everybody around you and it helps you make better decisions in your life. If you just take some time and do some self exploration, which is scary because you have to be really honest to do that. There's not a lot of bands with a bunch of 25-year-old dudes in it, I think, that you have taken the time to even recognize, well, what are our political philosophies? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. And so when I listen to what Lowest of the Low started off as, that's a pretty smart, educated position, right? And that alone allows you to say, well, that's not for us. That is, because this is a band that kind of knows yourself. A bunch of 25-year-old guys are usually like, we don't know what our stand is on corporate greed. That's
Yeah.
I think that's a really interesting point that maybe a lot of people don't have or recognize.
Lance, I was
Yeah. And
really
again,
hoping you were going to jump on the whole Coke and hookers thing right there, but you went a
Yeah.
different way.
well,
Yeah. What
here's
are
a
you
story for you.
saying?
When we started in social insecurity, David and I and my friend Ken, we played a very hallowed and famous punk rock castle called Larry's Hideaway in Toronto. And it was an anchor of the punk scene at the time, Larry's Hideaway and the Turning Point and the Edge and places like that. And when we were 17 years old, I think we played Larry's Hideaway for the first time, and we were very excited. We were opening for L'Étranger, which, as the joke goes in our band, if we could just open for L'Étranger, we'd have made it. And and it was like in a very short time in our career, we opened for L'Étranger, and we're like, oh, I guess we need a bigger dream now, right? But we opened for them, and then at the end of the night, famously, this place was run by gangsters and organized crime, and then there was also sex workers run out of the upstairs, and all the little rooms up there is also where the band room was and everything. And it was a very, very dark and sort of there was a real sadness around that part of the club. But when it came time to get paid, Fred, who was the guy who ran the shows, tried to pay me with hookers, right? He's like, well, what about instead of giving you money, And I was like, I'm 17 years old. I'm navigating the world like that for the first time, kind of.
Yeah.
And my joke response has always been like, I'm the lead singer in a band and I'm 17. I don't need hookers. Like, dude, I'm in a band,
Fair.
I need
But
money.
yeah, I need money is what I need. And so how kind of horrifying. And I always thought if I wrote a memoir about my life, that's what it would open with, because I feel like it really opens up the discussion between sex work and prostituting your art, in a world where in a capitalist world where everything is about the denomination of what is it worth. What is your brain worth? What is your body worth? What is your thoughts worth? Everything is weighed in a weird way.
That's such an odd story. I'm just trying to think of the man that did that and what value he puts on those girls and what value he puts on these musicians, and the fact that he can just trade these things off.
Mm-hmm.
That's a very weird thing.
It's a very weird thing, but
and
I'd like
you're
to think
17.
yeah, I'd like to think it was an uncommon thing, but I don't think it is. It's like
Yeah.
very recently there was a big scandal that we don't need to go into in a club in Toronto, big scandal with the promoter, and people have been boycotting the club. And I said, no, I totally understand why people are angry and are boycotting the club. But I said, if we scratch the surface of every single club we play in Toronto and environs and all across this country, we're going to find some pretty ugly stuff. Like,
Sure.
it's just the nature of the beast. It's toxic and it's built on a weird model of, I'm not naive about the fact that when somebody books you into a bar, yes, you're popular, your music is popular, but they're booking you to sell alcohol, period. That's the model. That's the business model, right? We're here to sell alcohol, and that band will help us do that because they're going to bring a bunch of people in here, and then every now and then you run. I know that because the exception to the rule is always the thing that shows you when you run into a bar, you go, oh, the stage is in a really well, like the acoustics in that part of the room are really well. That's why they put the stage there. And people who are thinking about music, who have venues, you go, oh, it's really rare that somebody does this. Usually they're like, yeah, you're over there by the glass window with the metal ceiling and everything is bouncing around, sounds like shit. And it's like, you get 2 domestic beers and, Don't let the door
Yeah.
hit you in the ass on the way out. And
I kind of felt that way about Block Company, right? Like that's a small venue to begin with,
yeah,
but they give you like that last quarter of the entire bar, right?
mm-hmm.
Which could house a lot of people. And and that I think the owner
100%.
of that guy's a musician, right? So he's not
Yeah.
necessarily trying to get as many beers and bottles of wine out the door. I mean, I'm sure that would help, but
Yeah, it helps. And of course, and
Yeah.
I mean, they've got to make money somehow, of course, but also it's like, it's the only place I've ever been given a charcuterie board as my part of my rider.
yeah,
So
that's true.
yeah, they're in
That's
it.
true.
I
Ron,
think
this
I knew
is
where you played.
yeah, there you go. One of the things I've always liked about your stuff is because I always thought Shakespeare in My Butt was aptly named because I always think you're a prolific writer. So I said in the intro, you've got Lois the Low, you've got yourself as a solo artist, you got Do Good Assassins, Rusty Nails. I hope I didn't forget anybody. I'm a huge Do Good Assassins fan as well as Lois the Low. Shakespeare in My Butt was aptly named because I've always thought your writing, it's like listening to a play because you
Hmm.
always have these interesting characters in all of them. Like, So Long Bernie, Bobby was a DA, Last Casanova in Town. There's like all these really interesting tapestry of characters. So is that sort of, are they all built on some of these stories you're telling us now? Like as you kind of went along, you're like, oh, that's a guy. We could put that somewhere, or what do you
Yeah, yeah.
think?
For the most part, they're real people, and to the point where when we released Shakespeare in My Butt, a friend of mine after it came out said, maybe next time you don't use proper names. Maybe you turn them into characters so that their names aren't out there. You're doxing these people in songs. And that's because I was so excited because before that, because of our political energy and stuff like that, I tended to write these big political songs that were, maybe not beyond me in terms of what I knew, but they were beyond me in terms of what I'd experienced. And so maybe they didn't ring quite as true as when I sort of stopped wearing the big P politics thing and started going, well, the politics can just be baked into stories about people. They don't have to be, I don't have to be yelling a manifesto at you. I can bake the ideas into stories of people because that's how politics happens anyway, right? In the real world.
Right.
And I don't ever remember consciously thinking that. I think it was kind of a happy accident, like most things happen. You stumble across something and it starts to work and you start to go, huh, and you start to lean into it. And so, yeah, so that's what that was all about. Shakespeare was about uh, a bunch of stories about people. And I'm always talking about, how there's no such thing as biography because there's a lot of fiction in biography, and there's no such thing as strictly fiction because usually what you're basing those things out of is real experiences in your life. And so that's what it was. Anytime I saw people like Henry, and Henry Needs a New Pair of Shoes was a guy in Riverdale Park who I saw frequently, who just had, literally electrical taped his boots together, and it was February, and I would see him a lot. And he was also, it's funny, what I love about that story is he was not a very ingratiating person. It wasn't like this helpless person. He was a total fucking pain in the ass, but but he needed help, right? And it was like, so that's a person. And I think the thing about writers is often their antenna's always up, right? So they're never off the clock in a way, because you're at a party and somebody says something cool over here and you're having a conversation. Some party goes boop 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 like this, and you
Yeah.
remember to write it down, or so that's always going on too. So, but that's when I clocked in on I think it has to do with my socialism, and it has to do because I paint the same way, which is that I'm kind of obsessed with people. And there's a painter I love named Alice Neal who coined, she used to refer to herself as a collector of souls. And I
Okay.
thought, oh, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm so interested in what makes people tick that I'm always kind of looking at
That's
them and
cool.
what's in there, like whether it's visual art or songwriting. So I think that's why the stories thing is big for me, like because I
Does that
want to know
become
what's
heavy?
going on.
Does that become heavy for you? Because if you're like, does that make you an empath? Like if you're listening to people's stories and if does that eventually, because there's a risk of becoming toxic that way, unless you can keep
Mhm.
it, if you can keep it one distance or one step away from you, then maybe that's not the
Well, the
case.
cool thing about me is I'm also, because I'm a rock and roll singer and a songwriter, I'm also a narcissist. So the narcissist and the empath meet in the middle, right? Just enough
Right.
empathy, just enough narcissism to stay healthy, right? I should have that thing,
See,
Howard,
yeah,
love and hate on my knuckles.
Yeah.
yeah. See, now Kim can't listen to this this thing because she'll be like, see, you are a narcissist. Yeah. Like, Ron, you blew it for me again. Damn it.
Well, I mean, you
Anyway.
kind of have to be, I mean, if not a narcissist, I know everybody's being diagnosed as a narcissist these days, but I mean, you have to be pretty self-interested and self-impressed to think, yeah, I have, what about my thoughts? And what about me writing my thoughts down and sharing them with other people who need to know my thoughts?
Other people they must love this.
What will they do?
Right now, then, do you find yourself writing for yourself or do you find yourself writing for the fans?
Yeah, I think the only good art is made for yourself, because as much as I love the community that we're a part of, and I think with our band, the line gets really blurred between who's in the band and who's in the community. We're very, very into the lives of the people around us, and sometimes we're involved in different things in each other's lives and stuff. Yeah. But I think when you're actually making the art, I don't think it's possible. Like, some people talk about trying to chase trends, and that's impossible, because by the time you've heard it, it's already, it was a year ago that they did this, and then everyone else is hearing it. So if you're chasing this trend, then you're always going to be behind that trend, and it wouldn't be authentic. And I feel the same thing about our crowd, is that we, I don't claim to know them well enough to know what they would like. We run into things where, of course, they're not a monolith, right? So Lawrence had a person in London one time, and I think it was around the either Agitpop or Do the Right Now. We had just made a new record, and they were talking about how amazing, they're the biggest fan we've ever had, and so excited that we came back to London. Lawrence said, "Oh, well, we're making a new record," and he goes, "Oh, don't even bother, man." Like, he's like, "Shakespeare in my butt," and so it's like, we get that, people who could care less if we ever make any new music at all. And then we have the deep divers who, we did a show last week at the Rivoli, which was just the end of the Welcome to the Plunderdome cycle. And it was like, we're just going to play Plunderdome in sequence with a couple of things sprinkled in. And it was sold out, pretty much immediately. And it was those people, no, I'm going to get just the latest tunes. And we even played some songs off the next record we're going to release in April. So they're real deep divers, right? Yeah, so we have all those people. Yeah. So we have a bunch of people, some people who are nostalgia freaks and don't care what else we did other than Shakespeare, and some people
album 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Some people want to be right up to date.
One of the neat things, I remember seeing you guys at Lee's Palace when you were doing the anniversary tour of Shakespeare in My Butt, and again playing it in sequence. And one of the interesting things was your tip of the hat, that amongst these 16 amazing tracks, there's been a couple that have really hit and really resonated. So at one point, Ron said, "Look,
17, Lance.
Sorry, 17. Oh man, there we go. Can we edit that out? We got to get
Nope.
Right. No, now we have to find out which one he doesn't care about. He's like,
yeah, exactly. I love
it. Damn it.
I'm going to tell Steve it was his tune.
Yeah, please do. Please.
I was like, Steve, it was Bloodline.
I know. Steve's going to have my head. Right. No, you made a real good point at saying, guys, I'm playing this in order. I'm about to play Rosie and Gray. Do not leave once you have heard Rosie and Gray. And it's a real tip of the hat, because there's so many great songs on that album, apparently 17. I'm going to have to go back and listen. And Rosie and Gray, of course, resonated with more people than not, maybe. But anyway, I just loved it. It was a tip of that say, I get it. You're all waiting for this song.
Yeah.
Don't leave. There's so much more show to happen, right? I found it really funny. As a songwriter, I thought, yep, he gets it. Yeah. That's cool.
Well, it's one thing for us, but we have our friends in Australia, a band called Weddings, Parties, Anything, and they released Rosie and Gray on a live record over there. They asked if we could, and they released it, and it became huge for them. And it's a very well-known song over there. And so Mick will even tell me that even their band, they have to play Rosie and Gray in the encore. Like, they have to play it. So it's not even just us. It's like they are in the same boat. It's like,
well, that's how you know it's a good song, man. Like, that's, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I am a big fan of waiting on something that's already there, or already here. And I have played that song live. I've played it fast. I've played it slow. I've messed around with the tempo. It always holds up. Like, it doesn't matter how I do it. It always holds up. And I was like, it's kind of like Jolene, like from Dolly Parton. It's just a solid song. You can't.
Let's not get carried away here, Lance.
Well, no, I'm just saying you can't. My point is, you can't, unless I don't know what you could do to screw it up, but I'm saying it's obviously a solid.
You're saying even Lance Dawson couldn't screw it up.
That's true. That is exactly what I'm saying. This is going It's going in the wrong direction for me.
This should be the watermark.
But
This
I
should be the
like
watermark.
it.
I'll write a song and I'll go, I'm going to send this to Lance. Let's see if it works with Lance.
Yeah.
I know I got a hit on my hands
Yeah.
there.
You know what? I'm not too proud to be Ron Hawkins' litmus test.
You're like my
that.
my poison taster.
Yeah, that's right. Can you fuck this up?
Apparently he can.
Oh,
That one's
yeah.
not going to take.
I didn't see it going that way. I really started off as a compliment.
I'm sorry. We joke because we love. Oh,
Yes. I love it.
Oh
That's
man,
so cool.
that is good. So so my other question is, again, this is very selfish. DGA, are you guys still? What's happening there with Do Good Assassins?
Yeah, you've been alluding to the reason why there's not much Do Good Assassins on the go right now, because there's just been so much other stuff happening.
Yeah,
And,
new album in April for Lowest to the Low, right?
New album for the Low in April, and not just that, but half of the Do Good Assassins are in the band Ace of Wands, and they have a new record out, and they've been touring. And then Stuart, who plays guitar in the Do Good Assassins, also plays with Crash Test Dummies and used to play with Matthew Good. So, trying to wrangle all these cats is not easy, right? So yeah, I mean, intentions are still there for sure to get that kind of stuff happening. But the one thing I wanted to tell you too about Rosie and Gray is this seems to be a through line of my whole life with music, is that I'm in a place now where, because I recognize the blessings I have, and I recognize that anybody to have a song like Rosie and Gray in their catalog that people care that much about, you should fucking honor that and not shit on it.
That's cool.
Because right after the Low, I remember when I had the Rusty Nails started up, and people would come to our shows and they would be yelling out for Low songs or whatever. And I was young enough, and this was new enough that really pissed me off. And I was like, I think I did a couple of, I'm not a fucking jukebox, like to try and joke about it, but on the kind of on the square. And then, so I was in that world because I was trying to make a name for the Rusty Nails. And then I remember in 2000 when the Low had a reunion tour, by the time we got there, I was up on the stage with the Low at the Warehouse, and there were some people yelling out for Rusty Nail songs. And I think that sort of set this safety valve off in my brain, going like, okay, you're the songwriter of all these songs. Like, get over yourself and just be happy that people care about these songs. And, and of course now it's so much longer after that I've settled into this idea. Like, I love all those songs. And I'm always hyped on the ones that just came out last year, or last month or whatever. And it's like, let's hit them with those ones. And I'm definitely in the band one of the people who, like, I sort of feel a little bit like you got to drag people with you, like we got to drag that dude who's like, don't make another record. It's like, no, fuck, sit down and listen to this, because this is as good, fight me. Agitpop's as good as Shakespeare in my butt. That's what I'll say, right? Yeah, fight me on that, or Plunderdome. And I'll be like, the thing I've learned is that you're not comparing two records, you're comparing an experience and an experiential time in somebody's life where they didn't know you and suddenly went, who the fuck are these guys, and they were also had no responsibilities, and they were in the responsibility of going to university, but like, they were out every night. They were living this kind of free existence. And now I'm hitting you with Plunderdome, and no matter how good those songs are, I can't make you 18, and I can't make you, not have to rush back and relieve the babysitter. And, it's just a different thing, right? People at this age probably don't listen to music in the same, death or glory kind of way they used to, which is like, you might cut off friend groups based on an album, it's like, most people wouldn't do that as, a 60-year-old. I'm still lean that way. And I said once in a band dinner, I was like, what I miss? I said, I miss how the tribalism of music and how we used to judge people on their musical taste. And then Lawrence looks at me and he goes, are you kidding me, dude? And I said, no. And then Dave said, yeah, I miss that too. You're
not 17 anymore. I mean,
no.
Just because you don't listen to punk rock doesn't mean that you're not a cool person. I mean,
that's true.
I don't know. Sometimes I have a hard time. Like, it's not like you have to love Springsteen, but if you don't know who he is and his contribution to the pantheon of American music, it's like, come on.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you this, if you'd be lucky to have people nowadays that actually listen to the whole damn album. So, I think the idea of albums is just such a great idea and a concept. apparently listening to all 17 of the or 16 of the 17. However, yeah, I'm with you, Ron. That's the big thing. Get people to listen to your whole album. You put all this effort into creating a package, right?
Mm-hmm. But
So
that the thing is, that's what, if you talk to my mom's old enough that she lived in a world pre-album. Like, you had Elvis singles, you had Johnny Ray, you had Little Richard or whatever.
Yeah.
It was not like you were sitting down listening to a Little Richard record. You were listening like an album. You were listening to singles, and so it's not. I don't think it's as weird as it might seem that kids are back to singles. But I think part of the problem is not so much that it's about listening to one song as is it about the attention span that's being created by social media, where we've had our record label say we make a little blurb for the band for the new album, and it's it's a minute and a half, and they go, yeah, awesome, and can you give us a 30-second? And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, can you give us a 15-second? I'm like, 15 seconds? Like, I don't know what you want on there, but yes, we can. But like, is there somebody out there who can't handle more than a 15-second trailer for your record? Like,
wow.
I guess. Okay.
I think we could probably pull something from your mom's blog.
No, we've got her book. She's on next week.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, she'll keep it concise.
Yeah, exactly. I hope she's not explicit. We're trying to run a clean show.
Oh, she's explicit. Yeah.
Ron, do you wear different hats when you're writing for different bands, or do you just write music and say, okay, that's a low song, that's a DGA song, this is a solo song? How do you put it together?
That's a good question.
I don't have much of a take on what my process is, which is the thing I intentionally keep vague to myself, like the mystery, the magic of it.
Right.
As I often say, like, we're hit with so many things in our life that are not magic and are like, I know where I have to, for a lot of people, I know I have to be here at 9 o'clock and I'm going to get to go at 5 o'clock and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. So for me, I like the fact that I still literally don't know what's happening when I'm doing it. And I just know if I do it, it will happen. And then, so because it's that way, like, things feel to me like they're just popping out of nowhere, so when they pop out, sometimes I'll go, oh, something pops out and I go, that's a low song. Like, that's got, it's so low coded, as my daughter would say, it's so low coded that
I love
it has to be a low song. Right. And then lots of other stuff just go, because I'm writing all the time, just be like, well, it could be a solo thing, or it could be and some of it's funny because the low are so comfortable and it's been so long that they're very comfortable with saying, yeah, no, not that one. And I go, oh, all right. So that goes into another folder. And sometimes I think the 246 record from the DJA, like 5 of those songs were kind of just like, initially I get into the low and the low was like, yeah. And then I'll talk to the DJ and they go, are those guys fucking crazy? Like, like the song called like Love is a Poison thing. They're like, they didn't want that song. Like, I'm like,
yeah.
Sometimes it's still a great song, but just not right for the band.
Yeah. So that's probably what it is. And then, of course, everybody in the band, we were talking about this the other day about there came a point, and it's funny that Shakespeare anniversary show happened the way it did, because there was a point where Dave had 3 songs from Shakespeare he didn't really want to play anymore, and I had 3, and Steve had 3, but of course they weren't the same 3. So that's 9 songs, so we had to either compromise or just go like, so there's that going on too. It's just that I might bring a song in and it's not like everybody dislikes it or whatever. It's like somebody dislikes it, but if they dislike it, and if you dislike it more than these other people like it, that's the thing. Like, if you hate it and they just kind of like it, then it goes, right?
Yeah.
But if you don't like it, if there's something about it that bugs you, but all these people are raving about it, then it stays. So it's
hard,
very organic.
Yeah. It's probably hard for people to do their best work on something if they can't stand the song. They may,
yeah, of course.
But
and I got, as I was getting cranky and petulant about it at some point, I found out via roundabout that David had said to somebody, well, I feel really comfortable telling Ron, no, not that one, not this one, because I know he has 12 other ones in his back pocket. So I was like, all right, I can take that, because
it does still hurt a little bit when somebody tells you that they don't like your art.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
Right.
I think it's a compliment, because you've created a safe space for people to say no. You know what I mean? Like, if you were a tyrant or something, then everybody's going to just sit there on eggshells. Like, oh, I don't know, man. Like we're not on your level and you know that, but I've had those talks with bring songs to the band and some of them are like, hey, that's a Monday morning whiskey tune. Or no, that's kind of a you in a cafe with your guitar kind of deal. Like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. But I always I feel maybe, and it's just my spin, right? Because we all spin shit all the time. And my spin on it is, oh, that's good. I've created a space that's safe enough for people to tell me, yeah, no, I don't think so. I'm okay.
Yeah, 100%. And again, we come back to this idea that everything is so subjective, especially when it comes down to art, that, that could be the wrong decision. And it might be a decision that 2 years later, the same person goes, oh man, I don't know what, like I'm a person who often I'm not allowed to be the guy who chooses what goes on the record, because in the past, there was a song called War Without End, which was on recorded for Chemical Sound, my solo record, Chemical Sounds. And when it came time to make the record, it was going to get released in Australia as well. So I had been sending demos to Croxton Records. And then when it came time to compile it here, I left this one song off, War Without End, because I was like, I'm not sure. And I left it off.
Sure.
So I got it mastered, and then I sent the mastered one to Croxton, and they were like, where's War Without End? And I'm like, oh, I decided to leave it off. They're like, it was the best fucking song on that record, so, and that's happened on enough occasions that people go like, you don't get to choose because you're clearly not a very good judge of your own songs. Like maybe you stand back after you've done that work and
yeah,
let the adults decide what songs go on your record.
But they don't get it. You're so close to it and you've written and rewritten lines. And, by the time you look at the song, it's got to be hard. It's pretty hard to be objective about it anymore because.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's so part of your DNA.
Yeah.
And speaking of Chemical Sounds and DNA, DFW, what is that? What's that sound? Just break that down for me quickly. For any Ron Hawkins fans. DFW is what?
So DFW is David Foster Wallace, who not Dallas Fort Worth. Some people think it's about the airport.
Right.
And David Foster Wallace is a sort of famous, sort of indie famous writer from America who wrote a book called Infinite Jest. And was known as kind of a bit of a punk and a really big brained. His books they tackle very big issues, and he's very wordy and everything. And I was writing this song, and I was a fan of his, and I was writing this song that became DFW. And my take on it when I started writing was just a song about words and about, sometimes words hurt us, and sometimes we use them as weapons, and sometimes we use them to, corral people and show them compassion. And what a crazy thing that's what they do. And then in the process of still writing that song, David Foster Wallace took his own life because he also had, I almost feel like it was hardwired because he was so thinky and in his head all the time. I don't know, but maybe that was part of the thing. He was in pain a lot. So he took his life. And then the last verse of that song became about him. And then I sort of felt like he came in and kind of hijacked the whole song. And it was sort of like, wow, this struggle with words, it was what he was all about anyway. And so it became DFW, which is David Foster Wallace. So, and the last line is the Godspeed DFW, like sometimes words, I can't quote the lyrics right now, but like, yeah, sometimes they hurt us and sometimes they save us, but Godspeed DFW, we know that people who care about words care deeply about them. And
yeah, I love that song. I don't, does that resonate? Do you get people saying that resonates with them or?
Yeah. And I'll get the odd situation. That one, Peace and Quiet, there have been a handful of songs where I wrote it, Saskia Begins, which is also a very personal story, where I wrote it, and then it would be like the first 2 or 3 times I tried to play it live, I almost, like I'm welling up so much that I almost couldn't get through it.
Right.
And there's actually a song on the last Lowest Low record on Welcome to the Plunderdome called Rainy Day Parades and Purple Hearts. And when we were recording that, I was going up to maybe close my parents' cottage up or something, and I had some mixes of it. It wasn't mastered and released yet, but I had some mixes, and I was listening to it, and I wound up having to pull over to the side of the road because I was getting all misty and couldn't see the road anymore, because I had written it about myself and David, who started in social insecurity, and we're still in the lowest of the low. 40. I've been playing with him for 40 years.
Wow.
And the whole song, the basis of the song is just that we started out with the idea that our music would change the world. And though the definition of what we mean by that has changed for us, I still feel that we're doing that, but we're doing it person by person as opposed to what we imagined it. You know, a friend of mine always says he thinks of the image of like somebody's putting gas in their car, and then somebody hears the songs going by in the car, and it's like they just dropped the gas and the gas is going out like this, like they're just so amazed by the music. That's how we first started out, but now we realize it's like, you know, work that you do one-on-one and effects you have on specific people, and then how they interact with each other, because that's a beautiful thing about the community we have, is that they are there for each other as well. It's not just about coming and looking at a band, you know, it's they're looking this way too, right?
Yeah.
So that song is about that. And then I wound up explaining that. And I just feel like, you know, like you are with the close people in your life, you feel like they're inside your head. And if you think something, they know it, right? Which is not true. You have to say things to people. So I was introducing that song somewhere on a solo show. And David saw the clip on YouTube later. And he's like, oh my God, I'm glad you didn't tell me that when we were recording it. He's like, we would have got through this, right? Like,
yeah. Oh, so he didn't know.
He didn't know until it was already done, and I was playing it somewhere solo, and I just introduced it because I hadn't played it. Right, it's a little difficult. The recording we did of it is kind of an experimental recording. It's so yeah. I hadn't the first time I played it. He was like, "Thank God you didn't tell me that when we were making the record, because I wouldn't have got through it." So sometimes I have that, which is a song will be so personal to me that I can't. It takes me a while to develop a tough enough skin to sing it. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's really cool. I love how you brought back, because I agree with you 100% about music being a timestamp in your life, right? Everybody remember, you hear a song on the radio and like, I remember what I was doing when that song came out.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. It's impossible to recreate, for those of us that listened to Shakespeare in My Butt when it came out, it's impossible to recreate that magic with Plunder Dome because it's a different period of our lives, like their stress levels or anxiety levels, whatever. But I mean, it can still be as an amazing album, but you're right. So it'd be interesting to talk to people that are in their 20s listening to Plunder Dome, and like, do they gravitate toward that and say, oh, this is the bomb? I don't know what you guys are talking about with this Shakespeare thing. You know what I mean? Because it's a timestamp.
I've had two ways to gauge that, which is cool, which is our Brian Heatherman, who's Sonic Envy is our label. He's the owner of our label. He did a pretty US wide sweep of Plunder Dome, and it wound up on a lot of college radio stations, and people were talking about it with the same kind of hallowed talk. They would talk about, you know, the song On a Bad Day or something in the way that people used to talk about Rosie and Gray. So that's a little less obvious than this other example, which is when I went to Australia to tour. I opened for Weddings Parties Anything on their reunion tour, so it was jammed, and people already knew Rosie and Gray there. So that was very weird. The very first day we played to 7,000 people. The first day I got there, and they were all pointing at me and singing Rosie and Gray. And I was like, because I was on stage doing a verse, right? And I was like, I could get used to this. Maybe I should move to Australia. But what was fascinating was that my set would just comprised songs from all over the catalog, and they didn't have a history with any of them other than Rosie and Gray. So it was like every song was just on an equal playing field. And it was interesting to see what got a huge response. You know, it wasn't all the Shakespeare songs per se. It was like some of them, and then stuff off Chemical Sound, stuff off, you know, 10 Kinds of Lonely. So that really reinforced this idea for me. It's all cool. It's okay, dude. You know, get over yourself. You didn't do your best work when you were 25. It's all good. You know, it's just the world is the world, right? Or it's like they talk about those science experiments. You know, I don't even know what the theory is about how there's no such thing as an objective science experiment, because the person who's doing it brings their thing to it, brings their, you know, bias. Yeah. So I feel the same way about records. You know, it depends on what people bring to it. And we've had lots of kids. This is funny because we played a show in Hamilton recently, and there was this gaggle of maybe 8 or 10 kids that were just old enough to get into the show now, and they were super excited, and they knew all the words to a lot of different songs from different records. And I come off the stage and I look over at the merch table, and Lawrence is signing some kid's forehead. And I'm like, wow, these kids are really into it. And we've been noticing that a lot of very young kids at our shows. And I'm thinking they have to be the offspring of 1.0 low fans or something.
Yeah.
But they're there. And I think for them, that's a good idea, a glimpse of what happens, because they didn't have the Shakespeare experience. They're getting it now. So
yeah. That's very, very cool, especially when, I'm right behind you at 56. And I think that's pretty cool when you're still attracting a really young audience that kind of get what you're saying. It seems kind of the message is obviously a little timeless, right? So yeah.
Yeah, it's what you hope for, right? It's what you imagine would be cool to
Yeah.
have.
We
But I think again that comes back to just, if you can, I think the one thing that there's lots of things we don't bring to the table. Professionalism is often one of them. Sometimes tightness, depending on what's going on in our lives. I mean, it's a bit of sometimes it can be a bit of a wreck, but I always think it's a charming wreck because I think it's very authentic. Like we are authentically what we are.
Well,
And we're
Ron, you
not
found the
trying.
right show.
There you
Yeah.
go. I know. Well, you're my people, man. This is our tribe, right? The people
Yeah.
who authenticness is the point. To me, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's why I
Your
make art.
your bass player is the bomb. Like I don't even care if he's plugged in. Like just watching that dude dance
Oh, he's
around and
plugged in.
really,
Yeah.
yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, he's enjoying the music as much as everybody in the audience. And that to me is like so much fun. Not that the rest of the band isn't, but he has the freedom
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be a little bit more physical than Ron can. He's got to be on a microphone. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I just enjoy that so much. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. He feels very deeply, Greg does.
Yeah. Andrew, are you impressed that I haven't talked guitars this entire thing?
It's incredible, actually.
It is, because I'll tell you this: ever since, as long as I've known Ron, I've only seen him play a black Takamine, which is kind of the Canadian version of Trigger, maybe, because the guy only he shows up one guitar, And
Mhm.
now I'm looking at a Rickenbacker in the back wall. I've never seen that before. I've seen him play his black Telly and the Gretsch. So in my mind, Ron Hawkins does his entire talent, three guitars.
Yeah.
Now I
Yeah.
feel like he's snuck another one in there. That's four. The collection is growing. I like this.
Well, to be honest, like I'm going to guess that for the first 30 years, I only had the Telly. Why is it not hanging there? It should be hanging right there. But I just used the Telly in the 1.0 low. It was just the tack and the Telly, and that was
Yeah.
it. And so it's funny because this year I got into this. I don't know why, but I got into this idea. Like we went on a East Coast tour, and I was like, you know what? It's 1.0 again. I'm just going to bring the tack and the Telly. And the very first gig in Halifax, I broke a string in the third song, and I was like, I played the 5-string guitar for the rest of the set. I'm like, it's not about 6 strings.
Yeah.
And like that's what I would have thought back then. I was like, it's about the show, man. It's and
Yeah.
luckily I'm not, Mike's the guy who has to do the fancy stuff. I'm just a Joe Strummer dude, like just 6 strings or none at all, like just hack away, right?
Keith Richards only uses 5 strings. So
there you go. And the guy from the Jesus and Mary chain with the 2-string bass.
yeah,
It's
that's
not about,
awesome.
That's all you need.
There you go.
I put another string on it after, but
yeah, after the show for the next show.
yeah.
Ron, so I want to thank you for doing the show. We wrap up with a very unscientific process. We give you a rapid fire number of questions. It's like shoes or boots. You tell us which you'd pick. I have not actually heard this list. Usually Andrew and I kind of throw a few back and forth, but I've not heard any. I would have thrown Docs or sneakers. I've seen him wear both. It would have been interesting to see which one he would have picked. So you just answer as fast as you can. There's no right or wrong answer.
Sure.
Before I let you go, though, I do want to thank you again for your time. I always
my
love
pleasure.
talking with you, and I always sequester you at gigs, and you've always been so generous to talk to me, and I love watching you. I certainly learn a lot as a front man from you. So thanks, man.
Cheers.
It's been cool. All right, Andrew, hit him up.
Okay, here we go. Dark City Streets or Quiet Countryside?
Dark City Streets.
To Kill a Mockingbird or Daisy Jones and the Six?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Lyrics first or melody first?
Melody first.
Joy Division or Creedence Clearwater Revival?
Joy Division.
Studio
That one came
record. Studio recording or live album?
Studio recording.
All right. Spray paint or acrylic?
Oh, I use both, but let's say spray paint.
Summer festival or pub gig?
Pub gig.
Handwritten lyrics or typing them out?
Handwritten lyrics.
Writing solo or collaborating with others?
Ooh. Well, collaborating with others, but that's very new for me.
That's very cool. And last but not least, vintage guitar or new custom model.
Vintage guitar.
And that's another episode of Backstage Lowdown.
Was I completely readable? Did you know? You're like, of course you can say that, of course.
Yes, I knew what you were going to say.
That's
cool, Ron.
I thought the CCR thing could have gone either way because Ron has just because you so many different bands and different flavors, there's always a little bit of a country rock-esque stuff in the background.
Yeah.
So I grew up with the whole sort of folk thing. To me, like, folk, punk, and hip hop are all the same thing, right? They're just like people's music, usually talking about the nitty gritty,
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I was going to just tell you too, like the reason that was so tough with the solo collaboration is I've never collaborated in my life until last year. And then we had some downtime with the Low, and we have a standing Monday rehearsal, and we're just like, well, are we just going to fuck around? So we were like, yeah, let's fuck around. So we went in there, and then every Monday in January, it was like, we came out and we're like, well, that seems like 3 songs. Like, we'd never done that before. And suddenly I guess everybody's just in such a safe and ego-free place that the ideas are just flying, and it's like best idea wins. And yeah, so there's three band written songs on the new record coming up, which has never happened ever.
No, that's awesome.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Do we have a name for the new album?
Yeah, it's called Over Years and Overnight.
Over Years and Overnight?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
As in, when do things happen? Over years and overnight. Yeah.
And 3 band written. That's really neat.
Yeah,
and
the
guys
cool.
are totally into it, I guess. They'd be excited about that.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I was like, why have we never done this before? And I guess it's like for Greg and Mike, they're the newest guys. They've been here for about 8 years, but they're the newest guys, and they're just like, I guess just investment. People feel comfortable, they feel part of it, they're invested. But I mean, we never did back in the day, and we were all very invested in the band. So I guess just the magic of a specific time. Maybe I'm a little different. I don't think I was ever like a control freak or anything like that, but maybe I'm just even that much loosey-gooseier. But it's been such a pleasure because it really is. I mean, it's terrifying in one way because I keep telling my record label, like, I don't know if they're going to all have to be double records and one a year or something, but like I'm still writing, and then the band's writing together. It's like just so much stuff. It's crazy.
Wow, that's
a
a good
horrible
position
problem
to be in. That's a great problem to have.
Right now, somewhere there's songwriters somewhere. There's like, how can I smack them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Just complaining a bit.
How can I steal his notebook? Holy cow. You had said earlier on, Ron, about the young people doing things so much better than maybe what we were doing in our 20s. And I kind of agree. I was just telling Andrew, I did a sort of a Nashville songwriter thing in Hamilton a little while ago. And I was amazed at all these young people there because clearly I'm like the who brought their dad guy. But so many of them, like, yeah, I just got back from Nashville, did this writing session. I'm like, what? You're how did you do that? So yeah, you're right.
Yeah, or you see these very specific things like what is it called? Claw hammer banjo or whatever. And you'll see some kid just fucking ripping it. And you're like, they're not enough years in your life yet for you to be that good. Like, how are you that good? Like,
he went that way instead of video games. I love that kid. I love that kid.
Crazy.
So,
although I guess it's like now, I don't know if you're the same way, but it's like a piece fell off my fridge. I'm looking on the ground and there's this weird shape. I didn't even know what shape it was. I'm like, what is it? I'm gonna go on YouTube. I'm like, I got this thing. I'm just vaguely describing it, and boom, boom, boom. All these YouTube things come up. Oh, that's where it came from. When I look in, that's exactly where it came from. I put it back.
Right.
I'm like, what's going to happen to general contractors? When you can just, for the most part, as long as it's not going to blow up or catch fire, I'm quite willing to check it out.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel more manly that way. I had to fix our furnace, believe it or not. Did the pilot, like something went wrong, and I looked it up on YouTube, and I was able to get it going again.
But that could blow up.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that could blow up. But my wife is very appreciative. She's like, "Wow, you fixed that. Way to go!" Like, yeah, that's right. I fixed that.
Maybe you are a man.
Yeah, maybe.
Let me go get my tool belts.
Yeah, my tool belt, embarrassingly, is like it looks brand new.
Yeah,
it just looks.
Well, at my parents' house, it's like if something goes wrong, my dad yells, "Marlene, get the tool." And it's a basically it's a hammer. He does everything with a hammer. So
Hey, at least she didn't bring you into the room, right? So somebody says, "Go get the tool."
get the tool.
I was like, "Oh man."
I'm gonna go.
He's here.
Hey, Ron just got here. That's great. Bring him up. Oh man.
Nice that the family loves us.
Yeah, there you go.
Yes.
Ron, when are you coming to Waterloo next, dude? What's happening?
I'm gonna guess probably April. We've got the record coming out. I think it's either late April or May. We're trying to go across. I think we're gonna have. I don't know if you guys know Danny Ladge and the Looks, but they're probably gonna be opening that tour.
Okay.
They're out of Montreal, so I think we're gonna be taking that circus across. The usual places.
Yeah, that's wicked.
In April or May. Yeah.
Nice.
We'll be sure to get out.
And between now and then, we're just gonna fuck around, and then there'll be 1,000 songs for the next record.